about some things that have happened recently. So I am seeing a psychologist, also taking prescribed medication prescribed by a psychiatrist. That's not a causal or logical contradiction, because it is possible to phone a psychiatrist to have a prescription refilled, and then subsequently, after you do that, make appointments with a psychologist.
Hey, it's your boy Mickey Farley here. What's happening? A lot of people think that I have a problem with homeschooling, and that's not true. What I have a problem with is unschooling. And it's fair to say that Cringeosaurus belongs in the Bad Moms Club, because that's what she engages in, unschooling. And I know some of you out there are going to go, what is unschooling? And what's the difference between unschooling and homeschooling? Well, unschooling is where you let your kids play video games or do whatever the fuck they want or sleep in as late as they want every fucking day, 7 days a week, 52-day weeks a year. That's called unschooling. Okay, and that's what I have a problem with. It's not homeschooling per se. And what Cringeosaurus engages in with her kids, at least recently, is called unschooling. And I know a lot of people out there are going to go, well, that's not legal. And you're required to do blah, blah, blah. You have to take state mandatory tests to progress from one grade to the next, even if you're homeschooled. No, that's not necessarily true. It depends on what state you live in. So, for example, in Oregon, it's not true. You can homeschool your kids, and basically, if you register with the state as an administrator of your homeschool, then you get to decide what the curriculum is, and you basically get carte blanche. I know that's hard to believe if you come from a more rational state like New York City. Like, Controller would probably say, or she would say that's not legal, or you don't know what you're talking about. No, there are, we live in a constitutional republic, and there are 50, and there's different states and different state governments, and each state government passes different, each state legislature passes different laws, and they have slightly different laws. And in some states, yes, they do require state, or they require supervised testing to progress from one grade to the next. And other states require that plus mandatory online education with, qualified educators. I'm all for I don't necessarily think that qualified educators should be necessary, but certainly they should be able to have to pass a test to get a high school diploma, right? But not in Oregon. Nope. If you're the administrator, you can just pass them, and it doesn't matter what they did all year. They could be playing video games. They don't even have to know how to fucking read. If you file with the state, then you can just do whatever the fuck you want. And by the way, somebody can look at, I'm looking into, because I don't think that she actually files with the state, which you are required to do if you homeschool your kids. So I'm looking into ways to report that, because I don't actually believe. Actually, I bet she probably has to, because I looked on Spokeo and I saw that she had some new information there. So she's using her mailbox, and her address is on record now, as opposed to previously. I had to watch, to find out the location of the apartment. I had to I had to go over to Stray Whistler's channel and watch one of his, search through his live streams, and then I found a live stream where they were walking through the city, and they walked through the streets to get back to their apartment, and then right when they're at the same block, Brenda's like, "Okay, turn it off, don't dox us." And I was, at the whole time, I was reading the street signs and following along, tracing their exact path on Google Maps. So that led me to like a two-block region where there were 2 apartments. Now, the one that they were at actually wasn't listed as an apartment on Google Maps. So I had to like zoom in and, oh, that's actually that's an apartment. And then I verified that it was the correct apartment by using Google Maps Street View and comparing it to another video that Stray Whistler had uploaded. So that was how I found the first address. The second one was just literally going onto Redfin, looking up recently sold houses, comparing it to the houses that Cringe filmed on her own channel where you can see the front of the house. Derp. Because she, talked ad nauseum about how they had bought a house. And so I knew the exact date that they bought it. Man. Derp. Hashtag derp. Derpity derp derp. And, I haven't even mentioned the screen recordings I have where Cringe invites Dacone 730 over to their apartment, and this was 4 years ago, and he leaves canisters of drugs on the divan in the living room with their small child walking around on camera, and the small child is unattended, not supervised, walking around with drugs in the room, and they're canisters of drugs, and they're open. And that's not even the lot of it. I have other things too. If you think it's appropriate to contact someone's employers on the internet to adjudicate a dispute about the philosophical nature of art, you might be a little cuckoo, my friend. If you think people are traveling miles, driving for miles to your house to sabotage your car in the middle of the night and somehow leave no trace behind them when they did do so, you might be a little nutso. Okay. Here's my Section 8 apartment, by the way. That's right, it's a Section 8 apartment. I understand why people don't like live streamers like me, and why they get hung up on live streamers. That doesn't mean that you're not a loser if you do that. But it doesn't surprise me that people do that they end up spending 5 hours a night, 7 days a week, or almost 7 days a week in the chats of people like Fred Johnson, for example, who just incessantly every fucking night, almost every fucking night, does a big, long live stream about people just obsessing about playing the I understand why they do that. And I also understand why people are very inconsistent in the way they apply their standard. Like, I'll give an example. Cringeosaurus, throwing that out there. Cringeosaurus, now maybe people don't know this about it. You have to be fair. People might not know as much as I do about it. But Cringeosaurus takes welfare just like you. But in addition to that, she has 4 different kids from 4 different baby daddies. Okay. And all of them are using welfare. Okay. And they work as, fast food workers. So, and they are uneducated. They're not going to get an education. And they don't seem to have any interest in going into the trades or learning skills. Because that's lame and that's for the energy, that's for losers. So they're going to be working at fast food for the rest of their life. And so therefore they're going to do welfare. So they're going to be retail workers, working part-time. They're going to be paid food stamps. So take everything that you don't like about the fact that VP uses taxpayer dollars to fund her lifestyle, multiply that by 5, and then you get Cringeosaurus. So understand that. Also, Cringeosaurus is not a nice person. She's not a good person. And I happen to know this. You might not, but she used to go into communities centered around terminal illness and befriend women and get close to women. So she would join their Discord servers, be close to them, including a woman who was hospital bound for her entire life due to a very rare genetic disorder called Friedreich's ataxia, which prevented her from having any semblance of a normal life. So she was hospital bound for most of her adult life. She befriends these people, but then she turns on them out of the blue, just randomly, seemingly randomly, and then starts berating them in personal messages and in text messages on the phone that she had. She tricks these women into thinking they're her friends, and then she tells these women to kill themselves because of a financial burden on their family. And I know at least one woman began refusing all medical treatments because of she was so shell-shocked, I guess, from this random attack of abuse that seemingly came out of nowhere. She also likes to berate people for not responding to text messages like in 3 seconds. But that's not really that relevant. Actually, that personally, that's not as big a deal than like telling terminally ill people to hang themselves in their hospital. That's pretty fucked up, and I don't know if I don't think VT ever did anything like that. So, but I see a lot of people who are against me attacking me, like they signed with Cringeosaurus. But you have to ask yourself why. Do you know these things about Cringeosaurus? How much do you actually know about her? Because I've been following her a lot longer than you motherfuckers have been following VT. Okay, and I've been following VP longer than you motherfuckers have been following me. I've been around longer than most of you fucking normie asshole, Johnny come latelys, okay, where you all just like started obsessing about VP like in 2022, or maybe later than that, like 2024.
I want to get into the reasons that Cringeosaurus might have gone ballistic on Serena out of the fucking blue like she did. Because I didn't really get into that in the last video. I explained what she did, and I explained why I have a problem with her, and why I've had a problem with her for as long as I have. And I think she's a bad person, but I want to talk about her psychology a little bit. It's not sufficient to just label people bad if you want to understand psychology and human nature. So I want to actually take a dive into Cringeosaurus's, aka Ashley Kennedy, because that's her name, into her psychology and her motivations on the internet, and I think shed some light on why she does what she does, what she do. Alright, so first of all, let's get this out of the way. Cringeosaurus is a parasocial nutjob. And you really have to understand that before anything else can make sense. And I've known her longer than you have, most likely. I knew her back when she was, a supporter, a public donator to Alicia Shepard. And it was actually through Alicia Shepard that she met Serena. And at one point she even joined Alicia Shepard's Substack. And the Substack was centered around surviving sexual abuse and overcoming trauma. Now, of course, Cringeosaurus snapped at Alicia too, and told Alicia to kill herself as well. And I have a video of that too, but that's neither here nor there. And by the way, both Alicia and Serena claimed to be terminally ill. In Serena's case, she had Friedreich's ataxia. Now, even though technically speaking, Friedreich's ataxia is classified as a terminal illness, people with the condition can go on to live relatively long lives, provided that they have access to continuous medical intervention. So when Serena began refusing any treatment at all in the hospital, because she was in a research hospital in Japan, and she was completely socially isolated. So Cringosaurus, aka Ashley Kennedy, was really a lifeline, in a sense, to some semblance of something that could be called normal. Because without Cringosaurus, you're basically a human guinea pig, and even the doctors have to speak to you through interpreters. So it's extremely isolating. And also the condition can affect mental abilities and the ability to make decisions independently and rationally. And, when Cringosaurus snapped at her, she told her to kill herself and told her that she was a financial burden on her family for taking all of this medical treatment because she didn't, according to Cringosaurus, she didn't earn it. Even though Serena had worked as a teenager, she had a job, but was unable, had to stop working because of the illness. The illness took over. Through no fault of her own, right? People don't choose to be born with something like Friedreich's ataxia, right? So Cringosaurus snapped at her, and now they did make up at a later point, but only after Serena began refusing all treatment. So in a sense, you could say that Cringosaurus continued the friendship on the condition that Serena continued to refuse treatment, right? So it was very coercive. There's a coercive element to that. So the question is, why would Cringosaurus do that? And also, why did Cringosaurus snap at her seemingly out of the blue? Well, the reason for that is because Ashley Kennedy has a pathological caregiver complex, and she has a narcissistic and extreme need to be seen as a caregiver. So to Cringosaurus, aka to Ashley Kennedy, Serena was her daughter, her angel. Or maybe Cringosaurus was the angel, right? The angel of mercy. And when Serena laughed at a dick joke, and I'll explain the context. So I don't know if you know who Lazy Cheetah is, but he was a YouTuber. I don't know if he still is on YouTube, but Lazy Cheetah did paintings, and because Cringosaurus is such a classy woman, these are the kind of people that she watches. He would slap his dick on the painting and paint with his penis. And so it would have penis imprints on the paintings, and then he would sell them. And, the paintings were complete crap, but, there was no artistic ability, but, that was his shtick, I guess. Slapping his cock and balls in the impasto, the oil paints, and then selling them to, classy women like Cringosaurus. Anyway, and Serena was a part of that group too. And one day, Lazy Cheetah was making a painting for Serena because Serena was in the hospital. And he made a joke about how he was going to slap his penis against the painting for Serena. And Cringosaurus went ape shit, started chimping out on Lazy Cheetah. And, but that wasn't really what offended her. What really offended her was when Serena laughed at the comment that he made. See, that really sent Cringosaurus over the edge, man, because, my angel, who I'm giving care to, is not sexual. Like if you have an illness and you're in a hospital and I'm your caregiver, I'm your mother figure, you're not allowed to be a sexual being, right? So mommy forbids that. Okay. So that's what pushed her over the edge, and so she had a meltdown, right? And that's when she told Serena to kill herself, to hang herself, to be specific, and also explained why Serena is a financial burden and why her family hates the fact that she is alive and was born in the first place because of the undue burden, for the financial burden that her existence presents to them. Okay, and so again, the next day, Serena started refusing all medical treatment, and it was only after that Cringosaurus made up with her. But she never took her insults back. She never took back what she had said. So there you go. And so I think it really stems from this pathological caregiver complex that Cringosaurus has. And that's why she can't work a job, because she's got to take care of her kids. She's a mother and she's nurturing the earth and doing all this other bullshit. And to get a job would be to shatter the illusion, because then your kids don't actually need you to be home 24/7. And plants, somehow they propagate the planet without Cringosaurus planting them. They actually don't need her to plant them to propagate. Shockingly and stunningly. So I think that explains it. About 4 years ago, Cringosaurus had a best friend named Serena, or at least Cringosaurus would have you believe that Serena was her best friend. And Serena had Friedreich's ataxia, which is a rare congenital disease that affects muscle growth and control. And most people who have Friedreich's ataxia spend most of their adult life in a hospital bed, confined to a hospital room. And Serena was no exception. And one day, Serena had the gall to laugh at a dick joke, and this really offended Cringosaurus. Cringosaurus went into her Discord and told her to kill herself, and went on to explain to Serena that Serena was a financial burden on her family, and that none of her family members wanted her to be alive because she was just a financial burden. The next day, Serena began refusing all medical treatment at the hospital, and she continued to refuse all medical treatment at the hospital up until the point that she passed away 2 months later. After Serena passed away, Cringosaurus began begging for sympathy, or sympathy fishing on the internet, because my best friend died. Yeah, your best friend that you told was a financial burden on her family, which directly resulted in her deciding to refuse all medical treatment, which directly caused her to pass away 2 months later. So that's what I have a problem with. Specifically, it's the sympathy fishing that I have a problem with. That's the beef I have with Cringosaurus. I have no problem with bullying terminally ill people into suicide, or people who have rare conditions that are a financial burden on their family into refusing all medical treatment. I have no problem with that. And in fact, I think the world would be a better place if more people who have extreme conditions like Friedreich's ataxia or terminal illness would refuse all medical treatment. But what I have a problem with is when somebody does exactly that, right? Bully somebody into refusing medical treatment, causing them to pass away, because if you have Friedreich's ataxia, you require constant medical intervention just to stay alive. That's not what I have a problem with. What I have a problem with is influencing somebody to end their life and then turning around and sympathy fishing because you lost your best friend. That's what I have a problem with, just to clarify. And I've tried to explain this multiple times, and Cringeosaurus is too fucking stupid to follow a train of thought. Because like most stupid people, when they hear somebody talking, they immediately pick up on a few key words and they begin pattern matching without actually listening to what the person is actually saying. But what they'll do is they'll pattern match key phrases to already existing ideas that they just have in their mind. So these are like cliches or just patterns of thought that are well worn in their brains. So they're not actually listening to what the other person is saying. So she's never going to understand. It's like trying to explain this to her would be like trying to teach a cat how to do the Macarena. Okay. I thought I would remake the video because I know people are not going to follow what I'm saying unless I get right to the point right away. So I had to remake things that have happened recently. So I am seeing a psychologist taking prescribed medication prescribed by a psychiatrist. That's not a causal or logical contradiction because it is possible to phone a psychiatrist to have a prescription refilled, and then subsequently, after you do that, make appointments with a psychologist and attend those appointments. So if you don't understand that, then maybe you're stupid. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, I want to share some of the notes because every time I go to these sessions, these new sessions, I take a notebook with me. So I just jotted down some things. So this is a psychological profile, core diagnoses likely or probable. Agoraphobia with panic disorder. This is the most clinically clear element of your profile. The inability to use staircases, drive, or leave a small radius around your home for decades is textbook severe agoraphobia. The disorder organizing your entire adult life around avoidance is consistent with this. Alcohol use disorder, historical. You describe becoming an alcoholic as a teenager and sneaking vodka into class. This suggests early onset, which is associated with higher genetic loading, greater severity, and stronger links to underlying anxiety or mood disorders. Possible autism spectrum disorder or schizoid personality traits. Several features point here. Extreme preference for solitude and routine, difficulty cohabitating, a decades-long comfortable existence in a very small, controlled environment, intense intellectual preoccupation with self-developed theories, and a certain rigidity in worldview. The misery caused by sharing space, rather than the move itself, is particularly telling. Narcissistic or paranoid features. The belief that you have solved problems in physics that the entire scientific community has missed, and that this is due to corruption rather than flaws in your theory, is a significant red flag. This is a very common pattern. A person of genuine but frustrated intelligence who develops an unfalsifiable theory in their own unrecognized genius. The framing that experts would have to concede or lie to themselves, there's no room for the possibility that you might be wrong, which is a paranoid and narcissistic cognitive structure. Personality and cognitive style. High-ish raw intelligence likely, but probably not nearly as exceptional as believed. Your IQ scores were withheld from you repeatedly, but you may have unconsciously interpreted as evidence that they were too high to share. But in reality, the most common reasons words are withheld is to avoid stigma in either direction, or because they were just inconsistent or uninterpretable. Intense, systematized mind. We gravitate toward grand, unified theories in physics, in ethics, in philosophy. This is a cognitive style more than a sign of correctness. Moral rigidity combined with genuine ethical sincerity. The euthanizing of neighborhood cats is striking. You acknowledged it had negligible impact on suffering, yet felt compelled to act anyway. This suggests an obsessive-compulsive dimension to your ethical thinking. Ethics as a source of intrusive obligation or intrusive thought disorder, rather than a considered choice. Counterfactual blindness. So you note, I note that there are inconsistencies in your narrative. So for example, claiming that you bartended, but then also claimed that you couldn't leave your house at the age of 17, then claiming that you fell asleep at the wheel repeatedly, and you haven't fully recognized or reckoned with these inconsistencies. So this strongly suggests motivated memory and compartmentalization. Development in family dynamics. A high-achieving, emotionally distant father against whom you measured yourself and felt inadequate. Relocation disruption in childhood had a real academic impact, and the experience of being advanced through grades while failing likely created a deep confusion about your own capabilities. And this ambiguity may never have been resolved. The death of your sister, that would be the competent, socially integrated one, the school teacher, while you remained a creepy, isolated weirdo who lived in a shack. This likely deepened guilt and a sense of comparative failure. Your twin sister's happy marriage may function as a quiet, ever-present mirror of the life that you never had and never will have and never could have had. That supposedly, according to you, you couldn't leave your house. These are the notes that the psychologist, these are the things that psychologists told me, so I'm speaking from their point of view, right? How much time do I have on here? I can't go over 15 minutes. Oh, it's 6 minutes, okay. That's good, okay. Philosophical beliefs as psychological expression. So your philosophical journey from veganism to antinatalism to negative utilitarianism, dressed up with a new fancy lingo that you invented, and advocacy for the annihilation of all sentient life, reads less like a purely intellectual progression and more like the systematization of personal suffering. In other words, your own personal problems. You're projecting that as a universal principle. It's worth noting that people in profound chronic pain frequently find antinatalism and related pessimistic views deeply resonant because those views validate their suffering as the fundamental truth of existence. Believed to advocating for total annihilation of sentient life goes way beyond mainstream antinatalism and enters territory that most antinatalist philosophers themselves reject. So this radicalization suggests that your views are being driven significantly by emotional experience and not philosophical reasoning. So you are likely a person of genuine but uneven intelligence, derailed early by anxiety, alcohol, substance use, drug use, educational disruption, and a chaotic family environment that prized achievement you could not produce. So as a result, you built a life of radical self-sufficiency, in quotes, in a tiny controlled world, and developed elaborate intellectual frameworks in physics and ethics that positioned your isolation and suffering as a form of superiority rather than personal misfortune. The tragedy is that some of your insights may be genuinely interesting, but they are encased in a defensive structure that makes outside engagement nearly impossible. Because engagement means risking being wrong, and being wrong means the entire architecture, the entire house of cards collapses. The entire house of cards you built around yourself collapses. The forced expansion of your world in recent years, when you had to move to a relative's basement, is probably the most therapeutically significant thing that has happened to you in decades. Even if it seems like you
has correctly pointed out that in the video in which he stole content from me, I had used the term shadow reading instead of shadow banning, whereas in my posts I said shadow banning. Now, in the original video, I coined the term shadow reading, and he was too stupid to understand that it is possible. And shadow banning would actually be the correct term because shadow banning means, the definition of the word is, when a mega conglomerate platform like Twitch, Facebook, I don't know if Facebook, I think Facebook might do this too, to an extent. So when you open up your feed, you might see very few comments from the user as opposed to the users. So I would assume that probably all of these platforms do this. Shadow banning is the targeting of individual users' comments for not removal, but the platform will algorithmically make their comments invisible without outright banning the user. And so that's why it's called shadow banning. And this is done when the user has ostensibly typed in something in their TOS. So they're not held to account. So it's not like the user can make a decision because they may not know about the decision. So that's dishonest of them. Because Ted Marcotte is a corporate suck-ass, he sides with the conglomerate every single time. But that's what shadow banning is. Shadow banning is the targeting of an individual user. What I was referring to in my video was the targeting of comments that discussed certain topics. So it's different. So shadow, but it's not the same as removing comments, because if you remove comments, then the comment count is decreased. Whereas what YouTube does is difficult to detect if you're the user typing comments. So you don't even know which comments are showing up and which are not. And of course, nowadays, like, this might seem strange because everybody knows today that YouTube does this. They're just aware of it. This is some background knowledge that everybody has. But at the time that I made the fucking video, I was trying to explain this to people who didn't understand. Stupid people like Ted Marcotte would say, what are you talking about? How does they work? So I decided to make a video proving that YouTube was doing this. And the way I proved it, fuckhead, is I made a comment on someone else's fucking channel, left a fucking comment, logged out, and it showed that one of actually I left two comments. One of the comments was not visible, but the other one was, and that proved that I was not blocked by the uploader of the video on which I was commenting. So it was not a decision made by the uploader to delete the comment on their comment section. It was something YouTube did algorithmically. Fucking idiot. I graduated high school when I was 15. Then I went to work at an editing studio in North Hollywood. And I also worked as a wedding videographer. Now, Ted Marcotte is an idiot. He slept with me from high school. And he thought he was going to be some kind of like famous rap star or rock star. And then Eminem, according to him, is the reason why he was a failure. And the mafia sabotaged him. But what a fucking loser this guy is. What an idiot. He's a moron.
Another example of why men in today's society have to take false accusations made against them by women completely seriously, even if there's video evidence or obvious evidence pointing to the woman lying. For example, let's say a woman, a meth head, falsely accuses a former boyfriend from 20 years ago of following her to her house, kicking her door in, chasing her through the house, and trying to choke her out. The police will follow that lead to the bitter fucking end, even if at the end of the line they find a man who's paraplegic in a wheelchair. So the inference that a normal person would make is that the man could not have kicked the door down, could not have chased the woman up the stairs to try to choke her out. That would not be possible if the man is paraplegic. You know, but these are not normal people. These are cops in the year 2025 or 2024, whenever this happened. And you know, so the woman is always right. And if there's an arrest warrant out for this man because of this woman's lies, these blatant lies, then we have to arrest him and we have to put him in handcuffs. And we're going to see all of that, and we're going to see the results, the consequences of this decision that was made by these retarded police officers. So Ted Marcotte of Taylor, Michigan, is one of these people who automatically sides with the police on a lot of things. You know, maybe not every single time, but a lot of times he'll side with the police because he worships authority figures. You know, he is a corporate suck ass on the one hand, and so he will defend YouTube to the bitter fucking end on all of their decisions. And you know, he defends the police when they abuse people because he worships authority. And psychologically, why is that? Well, it's because of his upbringing. It's the way he was raised. You see, Ted Marcotte has a reading disability, and he's not particularly bright as it is. So he had to work really hard in school, but he got a lot of positive feedback from authority figures for, you know, working 10 times as hard as his peers to get to the point where he is marginally above the arithmetic average of his peer group, reading-wise. You know, and that was one of the lessons he learned. Don't think about developing yourself from a comparative advantage standpoint. You know, don't look at things you're really good at. Look at things that you're bad at, and then work really, really 10 times harder than everyone else, so that you get to be marginally above the arithmetic average. You know, so that has been his life strategy, and that's why he chose music, because he has no natural musical ability. You know, he's a terrible he has no natural ear for music, but he worked really, really hard, and so he got really, really good at being above the arithmetic average, music-wise. So he can play music fairly well, and he can keep a tempo, but he completely lacks imagination, he completely lacks talent. And you know, if you're going to do that, if you're going to pursue a career in music and you don't have any natural talent, then the best you'll be able to accomplish is being really, really good at doing something you're really bad at, instead of focusing on stuff that you are good at, that you have natural talent for, and developing those, which is what a psychologically normal person would do. You know, again, he was trained from at a young age by authority figures, by teachers, and also his parents, that this is the wrong approach. You know, and his violent outbursts is a manifestation of that as well, because when he was young, he got into a lot of fights in school, and he lost a lot of fights because he was scrawny, short, and not very good at fighting. But his parents taught him that losing a fight was the worst thing that you could do. Don't try to avoid fights. Don't try to avoid physical altercations with bullies. Or not even, one thing you could do actually is get a pipe, a metal pipe, and use that as a kind of brass knuckles. If you're ever in an encounter where you're being beaten up by a group of people, you could try doing that. But rather than doing that, he was taught that that losing a fight was the worst thing that you could do. So he's going to, get into a bunch of fights, and eventually got to the point where he could fight better than the arithmetic average of his peer group. Even though he didn't have the physical ability to be a fighter, right? So, and then of course he has a lot of brain damage from all these fights that he got into in high school, and that created a vicious cycle, because now he has traumatic brain encephalopathy, or whatever it's called, and so he has low impulse control. That's why he throws women against walls if they piss him off. So he's a woman beater, a woman abuser, an actual woman abuser, okay, not just someone who's falsely accused. But he worships authority figures, right? So, and if somebody that he just has a disagreement about art online with turns out to be a professor of art, or professor of English, or something, professor of communications, then he must be a charlatan, and we need to try to get him fired, because I'm getting so much cognitive dissonance that I can't take it. Because, professor is an authority figure in his mind, but then he gets all this cognitive dissonance. So this explains why he would be the type of person to defend this worship that we're going to watch here. His former girlfriend from 20 fucking years ago, I guess she stalked him on Facebook or something, and found out that he was living a happy life despite being paraplegic. And so she decided that, rather than live with her life choices, because she's a meth head, and probably not doing very well in life because she's a fucking meth head, and you can see it's obvious just by looking at her. So she's going to try to ruin his life by making this blatantly false accusation. And she, for all we know, maybe she didn't know that he was in a wheelchair, but and that's why her lies were so obviously outlandishly ridiculous. But regardless of the fact, she lied. Police made a false accusation, and what did the police do in response to it? And so what did the police do upon learning this new piece of information that he is in a wheelchair? A normal person would think, well, maybe there's at the very least they might go, well, maybe there's a mistaken identity situation going on here. Maybe we have the wrong guy, I don't know. But then, I guess we'll cut to the chase here. This is where it gets really ridiculous. Okay, here we go. So they're going to handcuff him because, apparently he's not paraplegic because a woman said so. So we don't want him to run away because he's obviously faking it. And, Ted Marcotte is the exact kind of person who would watch a video like this and go, oh, well, he is faking it. Because he's an idiot, and that's just the way he is. Of course, he has medical records. He's going to sue the Atlanta Police Department, or whatever department it was. He's going to be suing in court. He's going to be presenting proof that he's paraplegic and all that stuff. But anyway, that's just a lesson for men out there to, take false accusations seriously, lawyer up, prepare to have, obviously provable lies be taken seriously, by law enforcement officials and
This guy's such a piece of shit. You really are a piece of shit. So let's just look at this guy's face. It's disgusting. Alright, we'll just look at this guy's face for a second there. For 9 fucking years, almost 10, going on 10 years, this guy's been calling me a bum and claiming that I'm broke and I'm a deadbeat and I don't work and I don't have any money. And then I prove that I have money, and then he shifts the goalposts just like a dishonest fucking worm. Now his story is, no, he has rich parents and he leeches off of his rich parents who give him money. That's his new story. Well, which one is it, schmuck? Is it that I have no money at all? Or I have money that I grifted off of my parents? If I prove that I have a job, then he's going to try to dox me and try to get me fired. So I can't just, prove. And this is the thing, you can't win with these pieces of shit. You just can't win because they're petty and they're assholes, and they will ruin your life if they get the chance. They will ruin your fucking life if they get the chance. And, this guy tried to get me killed. He tried to get me fucking killed. Are you going to apologize for claiming that I am a bum who is broke and a deadbeat who lives in $100 a week hotel or motels? Roach-infested motels? Right, when are you going to apologize about that? And by the way, where are these $100 a week motels of which you speak? I've never heard of that before. You fucking boomer. Piece of shit. Have you ever heard of that? It could be, you could go to like the dumpiest fucking ghetto motel, and they're still going to charge you more than what you would pay for rent, in an apartment. But try explaining that to this asshole. It's like trying to, teach a cat how to drive a car. It's just not going to happen. But this guy works at Proto Manufacturing in Taylor, Michigan on Universal Drive, so go contact them. Tell them what he gets up to on the internet. Go do it. Off you go. But he can just do whatever the fuck he wants, right? He gets away with all the shit. YouTube doesn't do shit about it. You used to be able to right-click and just save this image. Now you have to do it this way. You have to go to inspect. It's really crappy. Yeah, but this is clearly a violation of TOS. This whole fucking channel. And, you know, Cringeosaurus, I didn't get an apology from Cringeosaurus either, for that matter. You know, she called me. She just listened to this guy because this guy came on her channel and started talking a bunch of shit about me. And he's like, oh, yeah. I tried to warn her, too. I tried to fucking warn her that he was a doxing piece of shit. So, notice, here's the really interesting thing. This video is something that I uploaded, but I deleted it, and it's no longer on my channel. And it was on my channel for a grand total of about a couple hours. But this asshole takes the video and re-uploads it. So now you're doxing her, motherfucker. Now you're doxing her. So if that's a, you know, why would you re-upload a video if like ostensibly you're anti-doxing and you're anti all this stuff? Well, maybe it's because Cringeosaurus blocked you and you're like a petty. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Is that the reason? Does somebody want to go tell Cringeosaurus that her address is on this asshole's channel? How the fuck do you even pronounce this name, by the way? How the fuck do you even pronounce? Hey, how do you even pronounce that? Oh, what is this about? Oh, what is this about? Oh. Someone recently on a roof of a building threatening to jump downtown. All the news stations covered it. She previously... Yeah, well, the reason that she said that is because she got the idea from someone else who had sent her a text message saying they were going to jump off their 8th floor balcony. And, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing to do. So it's like, I don't know, like socially awkward where somebody says they're going to jump off their roof and then they send them a bunch of money. And your response is to go, oh, you know, the homeless shelter I'm staying at, you know, somebody jumped off the roof. I'm so done. I'm so done with everything. Watch the news, not cover this. Sounds like Asperger's to me. Sounds like Asperger's. his energy? Is that supposed to be who the fuck? Well, good guess. It's actually
I
myself.
want to talk about some things that have happened recently. So I am seeing a psychologist. Also taking prescribed medication prescribed by a psychiatrist. That's not a causal or logical contradiction because it is possible to write, phone a psychiatrist to have a prescription refilled, and then subsequently, after you do that, make appointments with